Okay, so in this video we will talk about classes. And a class is basically just a blueprint for an object. So instead of, for example, if we want to create an array of person objects where each person object has a name that is something, and an age, and maybe a hobby. And instead of having to create each person object basically like this individually and create the entire object and then push it onto into an array of the other person's object, it would be much simpler if we could have basically a blueprint of this object, which we basically just had to provide values to. So the only thing we would know that a person object would have a name, an age, and a hobby, and that would already be set. And so the only thing we would need to provide it with is the values for each of these keys. So Christian, 30, and coding in this case. And that is where classes come in, which are, as I said, blueprints for objects. And the way you create a class is that you prefix it with the word class, and then you name it something fitting that you want to call it. So in this case, I'm going to call it person. And you have, when you create a class, to write the first letter of what you want to call your class with a capital letter. So like this, class person. And after that, you add a set of curly brackets. And now we have a class here called person. And then we need to add the properties to this class, so which are basically the blueprint for how the class is going to look, or how the object that this class is going to be able to create is going to look. And we want to have name, age, and hobby. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, here we need to use a method in the class which is belongs to the class object, which is called a constructor. So we use this constructor to basically when the program sees that reads this class, it will first fire off this constructor function here and basically build the class for us, or build the property of the class for us. So what this constructor function does is that it basically sets up the entire class for us. And this constructor function, it takes a couple of parameters. In this case, we want, when these parameters basically represents the properties of the object that this class is gonna be a blueprint for and be able to build. So what the properties of this person object that we in the future want to create, we know that we want to have a name, we want it to have a name, we want it to have an age, and we want it to have a hobby. And the way that we then initialize these properties then is by calling this keyword and then setting them to whichever argument we have supplied here. So this dot name equals name. So this project's name will be equal to the name property that will be supplied to this class via the constructor. And then this dot age will be equal to the age that is supplied. And then this dot hobby will be equal to the hobby it is supplied later on. And this is basically how you set up a class and how you create it. So, and how we then use this class to then create a new person object is that we basically can create a new variable here called const Christian equals, and then I want to use this class here to build a new person called Christian. So then I say new, and then I use my person class here, and then I just basically supply this class here with the parameters or with the values that will match up with these parameters here, so name, age, and hobby. So the name will be Christian. The age will be 30. You just supply the values, not the keys. And the hobby will be coding. And then if I would console.log Christian now, and I would refresh this. Oh, person has already been declared. Oh, okay, so this has apparently already been declared. So we just do like that. Then we can see that we have a new person object here with the name of Christian, with age of 30, and with the hobby of coding. So that's how you can create a new object that has already been defined in a certain way by using a class. A class can also take in custom methods that you want to write, which we then can call on the class. So if I, for example, would write a method here called presentation, I would basically set this to a function like this, or a method, and then this would return something. And in this case, I want to return a string here where I basically present myself, or the person present himself. So first I want to say, hi, my name is, and then I want to push in a variable here, this dot name. I am this dot age. So I am, in this case it would say, if I'm for Christian now, if I would call this presentation, hi, my name is Christian, I am 30. And then I would continue here, years old, and I like, and then I would simply put in the hobby. So this dot hobby. And then if I would save this, and then here, instead of just logging Christian, I could log Christian dot presentation, since presentation is now a method on the Christian object. So when I refresh this, we can see that we get this string returned. Hi, my name is Christian. I am 30 years old and I like coding. So these classes, just like objects, they can take methods which can return code to you. So basically functions belonging to objects, or in this case function belonging to classes, which are become generalized functions, which you then supply with whatever you want. So that's basically how you create a class, and how then you consume a class and use it to create a new object. What something other that's quite useful regarding classes is something called inheritance. And that is basically creating a class that basically inherits the properties of another class. So it basically can use whichever property that class has and then add on its own properties. You don't have to, if for example you have a person class which already have a name and age and hobby, and then maybe you want to write a new class called employee, then maybe you don't want to write name and age again. Maybe you just want to inherit them from this person class, since maybe Christian is an employee, but he's also a person. So what I could do then is that I could write a new class here called class employee, and then I would use the keyword called extends to tell JavaScript that this employee class is an extension of the person class. And then I would basically just set it up in the same way. So this class would also need a constructor. And it's going to have some of the same properties as the person class. So it's going to have a name. The employee is going to have an age. We don't need to put in the hobby, but the employee is going to have a role. And then this constructor function we then set up like this, just like we did with the normal class, or the parent class. And then here comes a thing that separates the child class here from the parent class. And is that since we're gonna use the name and the age from the parent class, we can't just define them with this keyword and then link them to our parameters here. Instead, we have to use a method called super. And what the super method does, it basically tells the constructor to, okay, take these properties called name and age in this case, and inherit them from the person class. So we don't need to define them with a this keyword anymore, since they're already defined up here in this class using this.name equals name and so on up here. And what we do then is basically take the last thing that we're interested in, which in this case is the role. And we set this.role to the role that we have been supplied. And then maybe we want to give this class a presentation as well, since maybe an employee has another presentation than the person. And then this basically would look the same as the presentation that we have done for the person class here. So I would basically just copy this and then put it in here. And then I would say, hi, my name is this.name. Well, I am this.age. Yeah, that's correct. Years old. And I, instead of hobby here, I want to remove this. And then I want to say, and I am a, and then this dot role. and then I would save that. And then if I would, for example, create a new constant here called const Carl, or we can write Carl with a small c, then we can say equals new employee, and then we supply this with a name. So Carl, we supply it with an age. It takes in a name, an age, and a role. So an age 26, and then the role of, let's say, music. Well, I can't really spell that. So in Sweden we call the musician musiker. So let's say musiker. And then we save that. And then just as I did with the Christian constant here, I'm just gonna console.log out Carl, and then I'm gonna call the presentation method that this Carl object has, which in this case is this one here. And then if I save this, and if I refresh this, we can say, hi, my name is Carl, I am 26 years old, and I am a musiker. So that way we don't have to define a new basically the employee object doesn't have to be basically a new person object with then the addition of role. We can just create the employee object like as an extension of the person object, and then basically just add on whichever attributes that person has that or that employee will have that person doesn't have. So that's how inheritance works. And that's basically it regarding classes. You can build these out and make them huge with a lot of different methods and stuff, but this is the basic concept and basically everything you need to know to start utilizing them and creating more standardized objects.